Is Sina Azod. He's an assistant professor of Middle East politics at George Washington University. Sina, welcome to the program. How much do you think Iran has been weakened militarily since this operation began with Israel bombing Iran 11 days ago?
It's good to be with you, Asieh. Look, in terms of degrading Iranian military capabilities, Israelis have been quite successful. We have to keep in mind that Israel is has the most powerful military in the region. Both quantitatively and qualitatively, Israelis have the advantage. Israel is also the only country in the region that has nuclear weapons. They have been successful in, as was in your report, to strike some of the launchers of the Iranian ballistic missiles, degrade Iranian Air Force by attacking some of its fighter aircrafts, which were largely out of the fight anyway, attacking air bases, Iran's air defenses. But even with that, as again was in your report, Iranians still managed to launch their missiles against Israel. And what they've done is that they use they're using their more advanced missiles, which are far faster, and they can bypass the Israeli defense systems.
So I asked our correspondent in Tel Aviv how long this operation, this offensive, this war, if you will, between Iran and Israel is going to go on for, and he suggested that is if the United States, if Donald Trump tells Netanyahu to stop, there's a good chance Israel will stop. Do you see that happening?
I believe so. I believe that the Israelis, I believe that President Trump has the power to end the conflict by forcing the Israelis to stand down. The first indication was a few minutes ago after the Iranian retaliation on American bases. The President Trump went on his Truth Social and suggested that Iran should pursue peace and harmony in the Middle East. And he also called on Israel to do the same thing, which I think in itself is a good sign.
He also, let me add one thing, he also thanked the Iranians for giving Washington a heads up before attacking U.S. bases in Qatar.
Absolutely. And I think in a sense he wants to justify his decision not to respond to Iran's retaliation. He's making the political capital for himself. But again, I think that while the president has called on the Israelis to also pursue peace and harmony, he can do far more by pressuring the Israelis to stand down. I think the amount of civilian casualties, both in Iran and Israel, are very high. One civilian casualty is far too many.
And Sina, clearly there's no sign of peace and harmony, not in the streets of Tel Aviv, not in the streets of Tehran. Where do you see this conflict going? Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was in Russia today, met with Vladimir Putin. In terms of diplomatic overtures, what are you anticipating, and what is it going to take to end this war?
Well, I think, at this point, unfortunately, rather, Europeans have no power whatsoever. They've proven to be ineffective in maintaining international norms and international law. While they have been negotiating with Iranians, they never stopped negotiating. Iranians didn't stop negotiating either. But again, they proved to be ineffective. I think that it's only the U.S., Russia, and China, to some extent, that have the capacity and power to bring an end. The Russians can, and the Russians and the Chinese can influence Iranian decision making, and the United States can also pressure the Israelis, as I was just pointing out, to end the conflict. However, from the Iranian perspective, Israelis are doing the Washington's bidding in the region, and this is why you see Foreign Minister Araghchi tweeted a few days ago that President Trump can bring an end to this by simply making a phone call to the Israelis. This is Tehran's perspective, that Israelis are working on behalf of the United States, and the attacks that the Trump administration authorized on Iranian nuclear facilities, I think that from their perspective, Israel and United States are hand in hand in trying to weaken Iran and destroy its facilities.
And finally, Sina, there have been really mixed messages, if you will, from the Trump administration about what the end game for the U.S. is here and whether regime change is a part of the equation. Donald Trump says, you know, he sort of floated the idea in a social media post over the weekend. The White House press secretary on Monday came out and said, no, our objective is the same. Regime change is not part of our strategy. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think, I think President Trump's remarks are one of his many, Katy Perry style behavior or attitude toward politics, that, he says something today, he switches sides. But I think that he's really trying to pressure Iranians to sign what he has called for, which is an unconditional surrender. That is, Iranians simply give up fighting and come back to the negotiation table and to sign what the U.S. is asking for. We have to keep in mind that President Trump had 3 foreign policy agendas. That was one in Ukraine, which the president failed to bring any peace despite his promises. We also had Gaza. He promised to bring an end to it. He failed. And now he has a 3rd foreign policy problem on his table. And he's trying to kind of coerce Iranians to sign sign an unconditional surrender. I don't think it will happen. I don't think Iranians will simply put their hands up and say, uncle. At the same time, as I've been saying repeatedly, the history of aerial campaign shows that you cannot bring about an external regime change through bombing campaigns. The NATO's campaign in Yugoslavia failed to bring a regime change after months of bombing. Iraq in 1990s was subject to a lot of punishment from the air, did not bring a regime change.
Well, Saddam Hussein eventually was killed. He's no longer in power.
Yes, but only after a boots on the ground and an occupation of Iraq in 2003. But we also have to keep in mind that in 1990s, Iraq was bombed severely from the air by the United States and the United Kingdom. And that didn't happen. That didn't result in a regime change.
All right, Sina Azodi, thank you.